Hey guys, Political Junkie 2414 here, and welcome back to another 2024 election related video. So, after I think it's been more than a year, I am finally making my updating my prediction for the 2024 gubernatorial elections. Now, the interesting thing, I'm so sorry that it's been so long since I last made a video about these races. I think it was, I mean, it's been since 2023, but I wanted to really focus on the races happening that year when I talked about governor races, and then between the presidential election, the Senate election, and the House, it's just these races kind of fell off of my mind. But less than 3 months out to election day. Let's look. Actually, we can see 86 days until election day, and these gubernatorial races are going to be really interesting. Governor races are one of the few offices um, where it's very common to find excessive tick or it's very where well, governor races are some of the only types of elections in the United States where we still have a large amount of ticket splitting. Now, that isn't true in all cases. These races have become more polarized just as federal elections have. But when you're voting for the governor of your state, you're thinking about your state. And so that means that when you look at a state like Kentucky, which has voted for Republicans at the federal level for over 2 decades, it has a Democratic governor, and some of that has to do with the candidate running and the popularity of that governor, Andy Bashir, which in that case was very high. And so you can see cross-party governors like that. You can see people like Andy Bashir in Kentucky. You can see people like Phil Scott in Vermont, who come from the opposite party of the majority, or come from a different party than the one that wins federally in their state, but still are approved of by the voters. So we're going to get into this. We have one safe Democratic state, and that is Delaware. This is an open race. John Carney is term limited. He's not running again. It will be pretty blue. And then you get into the safe red states, Utah, Montana, North Dakota. I think I had Montana as a likely red state last time around. I'm moving it into safe. Greg Gianforte will be reelected as governor pretty easily. Missouri, Indiana, West Virginia, and Vermont, as we just talked about with Phil Scott. He's a very liberal Republican, one of the most popular governors in the U.S., and he's running for his fifth term, I want to say. He was elected in 2016, so yeah, this would be his fifth term. Now, Vermont and New Hampshire are are the only two states that hold governor elections every 2 years. So you will see, we saw them up in 2022, 2020, 2018, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of other states used to hold their governor elections every 2 years, but most have gone to four. But Vermont and New Hampshire are still holding out. They are still exceptions to this rule. And yeah, now going on to these free competitive governor races, we have Washington, North Carolina, and New Hampshire. So we're going to start off in Washington. These are all open races, by the way. So the incumbent Democrat in Washington is Governor Jay Inslee. He's not running for re-election. And we have a pretty interesting primary here. Actually, wait, let me focus on one thing. I was going to show you how much Inslee won by. Well, I guess I will anyway. But Inslee won by about 13 points in 2020. He underperformed Joe Biden. But he's been reelected twice, and he's not running for a fourth term. Washington just held their blanket primary, which means that unlike most states, you have Democrats and Republicans all on the ballot. Every candidate from every party is on the same ballot, and the top two vote getters advance to the general election. So in this case, we got Attorney General Bob Ferguson as the Democratic candidate, and former Republican Congressman Dave Reichert as the GOP candidate. And so this race is going to be closer than I think a lot of people expect. I expect it to be a potential dark horse race for Republicans. Reichert represented a suburban district for the better part of 2 decades. um, in Congress. He retired in 2019, and his seat was picked up by a Democrat in the 2018 midterms. But we don't have a lot of polling for the state. A lot of Northwest Progressive Institute um, polling, which I would say are pretty decent polls. I'm not an expert on Washington politics and their polling firms, but generally Echelon Insights is usually skews to the left. I'm surprised to see that they have oh, but it was sponsored by it seems like a conservative group, so that explains why Reichert was having this massive lead in this poll. But I think Reichert has a decent chance to win in a state like Washington, another northwestern state with I don't know how popular Inslee is, but in Oregon 2 years ago we had an open race where the Democratic incumbent governor was very unpopular, and she was not able to run again. But the Speaker of the Oregon State House, I believe, Tina Kotek, was very much linked to Brown, and she had to face off in a very competitive race. And Oregon's a very blue state, but we've seen moderate Democrat in the Democratic primaries there this year. Progressives did not do very well, and I think in Washington it's to a lesser extent, but I think in this western area, the west coast of the United States, there's definitely been a pushback on the Democratic side against more progressive values. I think there's a clear openness to voting for more conservative candidates. Um, that doesn't mean that these states still aren't liberal or democratic at heart. But it is interesting. So, anyways, I'll get to the point. I do think Reichert is not going to win, but I think he'll get it down to single digits. I think you'll see Ferguson win by 7, 8 points. In 2020, I think he won. I think Ferguson won his reelection by like 13 points. I want to say so, a pretty similar margin to Inslee. But yeah, I think this race will be within the single digits. Probably one of the closest races, statewide races in Washington this year, much closer than the Senate race or the presidential. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. I could definitely see moving this down to lean D in the future. But for now, just gonna go with likely D. So yeah, then we go down to North Carolina, open another open race with a Democratic incumbent, Roy Cooper, who was previously considered to be possibly be Vice President Kamala Harris's running mate. Cooper took himself out of consideration. And we have a very interesting race here. We have the Attorney General Josh Stein, the Democratic nominee, versus Mark Robinson, the Republican nominee. Uh, he and Robinson's the incumbent lieutenant governor of the state, and he won a contested GOP primary with Donald Trump's backing. But Robinson, despite his comfortable victory back in 2020 in the lieutenant governor's race, which wasn't a very closely watched race, he's very much a fringe, a bad candidate. He has really made some controversial statements saying that and I quote, some folks need killing. He's made misogynistic comments and really not helped his case to the point where some North Carolina Republicans, like Senator Tom Tillis and the lieutenant, was Dale Folwell the lieutenant governor? Either way, he was his primary opponent. They have both decided not to endorse Robinson. Whereas Stein consolidated the Democratic vote very early. And in almost every poll that's taken on the presidential race in North Carolina, they also polled this governor race. And Stein is running ahead of Kamala Harris. And so I think that given North Carolina's typical tendency to elect Democrats to statewide office, despite Republicans being pretty dominant at the federal level, even if they only win by a little bit, I think Stein wins by 2 to 3 points. If the election was held right now, I'm moving this up to Lean D from Tilt D. This race gives me a lot of parallels between this has a lot of parallels between or to Pennsylvania's 2022 governor race. You have an incumbent Democratic attorney general running for governor, a controversial Republican nominee with Trump's backing, who's made some very, very controversial statements. Um, Now, Shapiro or Stein's not going to win by 15 points in North Carolina. It's a redder state than Pennsylvania, but I could see him winning by more than Roy Cooper did in 2020, which would be quite the performance. And Robinson could really drag down Trump in this state. There's been a lot of talk recently about Kamala Harris winning North Carolina. I don't think that she's going to win it because it's a stubbornly red state, even if it is very, very close every time. But on the gubernatorial side, I mean, I definitely see Stein as the favorite right now. Robinson's campaign is not doing him any favors. I think the only real upside for North Carolina Republicans this year is that they were able to successfully gerrymander the U.S. House map, and so they are likely to pick up three, possibly four seats from the Democrats in the House delegation, which, depending on the results in November, could help them keep the lower chamber. But yeah, aside from that, I really don't think they're having a good time in North Carolina right now. Robinson's still very much in this race, but his campaign strategy has really not helped him out, whereas Stein is really appealing to more centrist voters and Republican-leaning voters. And keep in mind, North Carolina is a rapidly growing state. It's very much like Georgia. Obviously, there are differences, but a lot of centrist Republicans, a lot of growing metro areas like Charlotte, Raleigh, but also rural areas that have historically been black that are trending to the right, where, like in Sanford Bishop's district in Georgia and Don Davis's district in northeastern North Carolina. So yeah, it's interesting the parallels between these two states. Um, and I think that Stein right now he's won two terms as Attorney General when albeit by narrower margins than Roy Cooper. But he was elected Attorney General in 2016 and 2020, which means he won twice with Trump on the ballot. I definitely think he is the right candidate. If Democrats are going to hold on to the governorship in North Carolina, it's going to be with Josh Stein, and Mark Robinson is the perfect candidate for Democrats in that case. And so now finally we go up to New England, to the state of New Hampshire, another open governor's race. Incumbent Governor Chris Sununu has decided not to run for a fifth term, and we have a very close race on our hands. Sununu was very popular. He won his most recent reelection by 16 points in 2022. And if you look back to his previous margins, I mean, in 2020, absolutely obliterated the Democratic nominee here, while Joe Biden was comfortably winning this state and won even in 2018 and 2016. So, I'm sure part of that has to do with his last name and him coming from political royalty. But now he's gone, and we have a contested Republican and Democratic primary here. Although I think at this point, with the primary only a month away, we have a pretty good idea of who is going to be the nominees. We have Kelly Ayotte, a former U.S. senator, who was elected in 2010 but lost to now Senator Maggie Hassan in 2016. She's coming back into politics. She recently picked up Chris Sununu's endorsement. She has former Senator Judd Gregg's endorsement. She also has Don Bolduc's endorsement, who ran for Senate against Hassan in 2022, and she's leading in all of the polling data here in these nonpartisan polls. In New Hampshire, the New Hampshire polls are usually pretty good. In 2022, they were a little off, but if you look at someone like Emerson, they have a pretty good track record in New Hampshire. Emerson College in general, I would say is a slightly above average pollster. I trust them mostly, but 2022, they weren't good in a lot of states. New Hampshire was one of the states where they were pretty spot on in most circumstances. And then on the Democratic side, oh, and Chuck Morse is also running. He ran for Senate in 2022 against Bolduc, but lost. He could still be the nominee, but he's not winning the endorsement game. He's not winning in the polls. Ayotte, I think, is the clear favorite in this primary. Democrats have a more contested primary, though. They have former mayor of Manchester, Joyce Craig, running, and then you have Cindy Warmington. Both have a lot of endorsements here. I would personally pick Craig to be the favorite for the Democratic nomination. I mean, even Warmington's own campaign poll shows her down, and Emerson shows Craig leading, although there are a lot of undecideds here. And so I think she's a good candidate. I mean, she's the mayor of Manchester, one of the biggest Democratic cities in the entire state. So if she can turn that out, she has a very real chance of beating Ayotte as long as she can hold on to part of the traditionally Democratic areas in the western part of the state. But I think Ayotte right now is favored. She did lose to Hassan in 2016, but that was a federal race. That was at the same time that Donald Trump was on the ballot, and while he almost won New Hampshire, I think he definitely dragged down Ayotte in her Senate race. There was a very very similar result between those two Senate races. Hassan won by slightly less than Clinton in the state, and Ayotte has presented herself as a anti-Trump Republican. She's more of a traditional Republican. She had a fairly moderate track record in the Senate, and she's built a lot of connections. I think that she's really favored in the primary and in the general election here. I think Craig is, she's a good candidate. She, according to polling data, and just I think, in my personal opinion, her being the mayor of the biggest Democratic city in the state gives her, a lot of additional electability points. But Ayotte has, been to the Senate. She's won a statewide election before, and New Hampshire likes to elect Republican governors. And it's as we saw in 2020, they are not, and 2022, to be fair, they are not afraid to elect a Democrat to federal office and elect a Republican governor. And I think we're going to see that happen. It's good news that Sununu retired for Democrats because that gives them a real fighting chance at winning back this governorship, but I don't think they're going to do it. At least not yet. I don't think that they are quite. I don't think they're the favorites right now. I could definitely see Craig winning this, but Ayotte right now, I think there's more of an argument for her. I see it. I see her as the favorite right now, very narrowly. So, if you look at that, I actually forgot to pull up a map of the entire governorship, the entire country and the governorships. So we will mark those down based on the results here. And my prediction, well, I guess we'll fill out what it looks like right now. Not Virginia. Virginia has a Republican governor right now. Give me a second. Louisiana, I guess. Actually, no, Louisiana flipped to Republicans last year. Forgot about that. Kansas, that's where it wasn't. I knew it wasn't 22. I knew there was one more based on the count from 2023. I was trying to remember. Um so this is what the governor, the NGA or the National Governors Association looks like right now. And it would basically stay this way. Democrats would retain all three of their governorships that are up for reelection, and Republicans would hold on to everything. So there's not a lot of competitive races here for the governorships this year. Obviously, there were a lot more up 2 years ago. That's just kind of how it works. The midterms always have the most up, but yeah, we have a couple interesting races here. They are kind of getting lost in the weeds with the federal elections, but pay attention to them. I think that we could see some really interesting results here. I think North Carolina and New Hampshire in particular are very interesting to me. Washington too, but these are the three that you really want to watch out for. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know who you think is going to win in these competitive governor races, whether you agree with my predictions, whether you disagree. If you enjoyed the video, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, share this video with someone who you think would enjoy it, and check out some of my other 2024 election-related content. I intend to be posting a lot more on here in the next 2 weeks. I am going to be going on a little bit of a trip in a couple of days, so I will have a couple of days off from making videos, but I intend to be back soon, by the end of the week, so I will do my best to be pumping out videos for you guys over the next week and a half. And yeah, we'll see. We'll see. How much I can get done. But I'm working hard, and want you guys to know I really appreciate your support. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time when I talk about all things politics. See ya.